Hello, guys. I'm going to be recording session two for you all to enjoy. Unfortunately, I'm going to be really busy on Sunday, so I have an invitation to a place. But I know that I owe you this, guys. So I don't want to miss this class because I know it's very important. So in session one, we established the names, the cosmological framework, and the three children of Aye. We read Oriki. We went through some of the Odus like Obejono with what I call the economic revelation. We talk about taboos. I've been sharing with you guys some rules on how to establish um, let's just say a good, um, I will say, communion with the mothers. We also talk about Obeyono, about Orumila as, we'll say, cosmic advocate. We talk about Odu Oyekumpelekan and the wound of the broken sisterhood. We talk about Osameji and the water of Olontoki and the origin of Yami's power. So today I want to complete a couple of Odu narratives, and then we're going to go into like some sort of like um, learning about the culture, the Egbe Gelede, and we're going to talk a little bit about Ipese, or the ceremony that Babalaos do for the mothers. So I hope that you guys enjoy this. Hopefully, it's something that you guys can take home, study. And if you guys have any questions about this presentation, please feel free to reach out to me on the chat. Okay. So, like I said, this is what we completed in session one on the left. And this is what we're going to be talking about on session two today. We're going to be talking about Odu Iretemeji. Um, we're going to be talking about Odu Irete Ogbe, Oshe Paure, Oshe Wori. We're going to be talking about Ekbegelede, the Ipese ceremony, Ibodu, and five ethics of daily alignments, as well as how Onile of Mother Earth has significance on this feminine power. So Irete Meiji is the Odu that gives us the mechanics, is the precise way in which the Yamis operate at a, I would say, individual level. So when the 201 Imoles descended, alongside them, 201 LAG came. So 201 mothers came. So they're not separate. It's not an opposition. They're actually descending together, and they are arriving in the same movement. So each LAG carries a bird, and the bird is sealed inside a calabash. So you cannot see it. It makes no sound. It is simply there. It's present. It's contained and waiting. So what Ifa teaches is that when a mission is assigned to her, when the assembly has delivered and determined that a specific intervention is necessary, that's when Iyami opens the calabash and the verb emerges. So it kind of like goes to the target and it carries out the work, whether it's illness at the intestinal level or affecting your ori, affecting fertility, or any of the powers that Iyami possess. And when the work is complete, the bird returns to the calabash, so it seals back again. So this is why the tradition says that when Iyami moves, you don't see her moving. You just see the effect in your life. The illness that doesn't respond to treatment, the pregnancy that doesn't hold, the confusion that doesn't fit. These are all signatures of the bird at work. And after the calabash has been opened, well, there's no turning back. So this is also why the tradition says that you do not wait until you see the effects. You need to maintain the relationship before the calabash opens. Um, you know, Far better to be the person for whom the calabash stays sealed. Because the assembly knows that you have maintained the covenant. Um, Now I want to talk about Odu Irete Ogbe. And this Odu is very important because it teaches how uh, Odu, which is the feminine energy that gives birth to all Babalawos, came to marry Orumila. And this is all symbolic, but the story goes thus. This Odu contains very complete account on how Odu became wife of Orumila, like I mentioned, and I want to tell you the full story. So, because the version that most people know is usually summarized, or I will say abbreviated. So the law that follows from it's known, and the story of how the marriage was actually established is rarely told complete. So the story goes that the Babalao of Orumila, of the house of Orumila, consulted Ifa for him on the day that he wanted to take Odu as his wife. And Ifa said that he needed to make offering, which he made. It was a bag of white cloth, the head of a snake, a white dove, white kola, red kola, palm oil, all these elements mentioned here, and a fun, which is white chalk, osum, which is red powder, a calabash. So he assembled all these elements with care, and then he carried them outside, and then he placed them on the road. So not a shrine, not a sacred tree, just in a road. So an ordinary road, and it's a path that where anything begins, or it's something that's visible, or it also can be invisible, and it's a place where people travel. So he placed his proposal in the road, and then he waited. So when Odo arrived, when she was traveling, she found the offering in the road. She stopped and she said, "Who has made this offering in this earth?" And Eshu said, "Orumila has made this offering to earth because he wants to marry you, Odu." So Odu said, "Not bad." And she accepted. But before she entered his house, before she crossed the threshold, she did something that the verse describes in precise detail, something almost never mentioned. All the things Odu carried behind her, the verse names. Uh, the verse says that these are kind of like bad things. It's kind of like a dark potential, or the capacity to harm. So it's part of her nature. She has a really, really strong uh, power. So Odo told them to eat, and she released them, all these dark things she was carrying, and she told them to eat from what had been placed in the road. So Orumila's sacrifice, right? So she fed kind of like this threshold, this dark threshold, and then she emptied it and free of of that. You know, she entered Orumila's house free of that. So then she opened the calabash of Aragamago, which is the name of the bird that Odu carries, a specific bird, and told it to eat it. And then she entered. So I want you to think about this. And I know it sounds a little bit confusing, but you know, the most powerful and dangerous being in all of creation understood that a real covenant, a real joining requires that you do not carry your weapons into the house. You leave them at the threshold. You walk in with your hands open. So when she entered the house, she called Orumila and she said, "You know, I have arrived. You know, my powers are numerous, but I do not wish that they should fight with you. I will not fight against you, Orumila. Even if someone asks me or pays me or commissions me specifically to move against you, I will not." And you know, the other side is if someone wishes to make you suffer, even to pinch you, even the smallest harm, Odu, with her power or the power of her bird, will go and fight, you know, battle that person. So Rumila say Hekpa Odu, which it's a very common terminology to show respect. You know, you are superior of all women of this world, you know. So he knew that he would not be displeased with her. But there's more to it. There's a law on this. So all the children, all the babalaos, all the children of Orumila, you know, he will implore them that they should never trifle with Odu, because Odu is the power of the babalao. So I'm not gonna talk about secrets. I don't know what to talk about what Odu is, but what Ifa teaches is that if Babalao possesses Odu, from that day on, he will be complete. So no Babalao is complete without possessing this Odu, this secret. And then the day that he comes into position with this, that's the day that he will never suffer. So the reason that no living woman might see this or do is it's not because women are inferior. You know, it's the opposite. It's because women already carry that power within. So there has been different studies about what this means. Um, some babalaos mention that by obtaining this is when you awaken your feminine side of the brain, which I think is the left, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, so, you know, the Babalao receives Odu because he does not have her naturally. So the women does, and you cannot really be inside something that is already inside of you. You cannot really become something that you already are. So this is what this Odu teaches, and these are the reason why women cannot see Odu. At the same time, it teaches how the marriage of Orumila, which is the divinity of destiny, and Odu, which is the calabash of existence, the feminine power that manifests uh, all the 256, I will say, tentacles of Olodumare, or different paths of destiny. You know, we talk about that on Oria Pere. So very, very interesting story. Um, I want to talk about this Odu, Oshe Iwori, also called Oshe Paure. And this Odu gives us the most formally covenant text in the entire Iyami corpus. So Orumila goes to the river's edge. The river, as witness, is the most binding location in the tradition. Excuse me, because water carries everything to its destination. So there's nothing hidden from it. And also, you know, river and water, all that, it's a symbolism of the destiny. So um, This verse starts here with this beautiful oriki, which kind of like speaks about how Rumila and Yami, they both eat from the same earth, and they both eat the same elements, rat, fish, bird, meat, yam. We are both here. We both require nourishment. This is our common ground. We're talking about Yami and Orumila. We are not in a position. We are both alive on the same earth and sustained by the same earth. So from that starting point of equality, or of share dependency, he's making a covenant, and he seals it with the most serious possible witness, not an Orisha, and not Olodumare himself, but with Mother Earth, Onile, Aye. So if you betray this covenant while living on this earth, you'll be judged by earth. So this oath is still spoken in practice. So every power, every proper ipese carries the weight of this covenant. So you're not beginning something new when you make offerings to Yami. You are just renewing something that it's very, very ancient. All right, so now we're gonna move a little bit towards culture, and this is something that exists till today. We're talking about Egbe Gelede. This is a society that dances for the mothers, and in the 14th century, in the Keto region, a society was founded on a single insight, and this is the power of Iyami that cannot be defeated, and it can only be honored. And that society built an entire institution around that insight, and this is called the Egbe Gelede. So the genius of Gelede is that it addresses the mothers through Jemoya, the protective, nurturing aspects of sacred feminine, which that's what Jemoya represents. So you don't try to meet severity with more severity. You meet it with a maternal face that even in the most activated Yami energy um, must recognize. And because her root Yami is a mother, and Jemoya speak that same language. As a matter of fact, every Orisha that's feminine, it's a type of Iyami, so she carries that power as well. So in this beautiful tradition, they use masquerades as well, and the masquerade happens in the agricultural season when the entire community's survival depends on the earth's cooperation. So you ask for the mother's blessings exactly when their blessing is most, um, I would say, materially consequential, right? So, and this is very important. Notice who leads the society. It's called the Yala She. It's a post menopausal woman, not because younger women lack power, but because she has completed the cycle of monthly opening and releasing, and her power is now fully consolidated. So, yes, women go through different physical as well as spiritual cycles. That's why a woman that has stopped, that pretty much at menopausal, it's someone we bring and we respect at the highest level, you know. So if you guys notice, in a tradition that it's often characterized as kind of like male center. In this case, a woman leads the society, built specifically to address the most powerful spiritual forces, Very interesting here. So if you guys have an opportunity, try to read more about the festival, this festival, Ebegelete in Nigeria. Very, very nice. And there's plenty of books written by this. I'm going to share some of these books so you guys can buy it, or you can request it from a library or however. All right. So this slide here, it's about how Iyami do not operate. The Iyamis do not operate chaos chaotically. They operate in assembly, and then they deliberate. They make collective decisions. So the assembly meets in the pre-dawn hours. The arrow, they call it. That's kind of like liminal space between night and morning, when the visible world is kind of like quiet. So this is presided by Eshu Ebita, which is a manifestation of Eshu. It's just Eshu itself. So why Eshu? Because Eshu is the only principle uh, that operates simultaneously at every crossroad. So including the crossroads between human dimension and the fifth dimensional reality, where Yami move. So he's kind of like the grammar of communication between realms, between humanity and the divine. So this is why every Puese begins with acknowledging Eshu. It's not a formality; it's actually a practical necessity, because Eshu is the translator. Nothing happens without Eshu. Without him, we can't reach anything. Eshu is that important. So, what does the assembly deliberate? Well, pretty simple. Who made a bow and who didn't? That's pretty much it, guys. Those who completed their bow are clean and protected by the covenant, and those who haven't, are uncovered and available for divine justice. And this is not punishment. This is just it's just a learning experience that we all humans have to face, because everything in life is about giving and taking. Everything in life is about sacrifice. Okay. So the assembly operates at community level. It's not just individually. So when envy and social conflict run high in a community, when people are routinely undermining each other or speaking maliciously, working against each other's success, the assembly is registering this. It's a mechanism. It's a divine mechanism that is activating collectively. So your neighbor's jealousy affects you. The health of your community's inner life. It's part of your personal spiritual situation. So um, be very mindful about what you say, what you think, what you feel. If you have feelings that do not align with love, gratitude, and recognition, then you're in real trouble. So those are the three most important feelings, and in that order: love. I know it sounds, I would say, it's sounds like it's something that it's kind of like, oh well, love is the power, love is the it's being used by many religions, but it's in reality love. It's how we can activate that divine essence we call Ori, that divine spark within ourselves. If we love someone without any restrictions, that's when our Ori vibrates the most. So very important. I want to talk about the Poise, and I don't want you guys to think about, like, okay, can I start doing this now? because really this is something that requires more than just knowing the materials, and there are things that I'm not mentioning here, but you guys might have an idea of what it's missing, which is blood, right? So you know, how to venerate Yami? Well, the answer is ipuese. This word is it's it can be divided, but it pretty much means sort of kind of like a meal, but it's a meal that is sacred that you cannot touch. So it's not a bribe. It is not tribute pay under duress. It is a fulfillment of the covenant. So you are paying into a relationship that Orumila built on your behalf. So the these are some of the emblems that Weibo allows use. It's missing yam. I don't say missing yam, missing uh, blood of the animals and meats and stuff like that. But every element teaches something. So for example, echo, which is white corn paste, it's pretty much cooling. And you're asking that the heat of the situation be reduced. Olele, which is being being put in, it's carrying like ancestral power. It's kind of like a transition food. The food that moves across thresholds. So you are acknowledging the transition you're in. Orogbo, it's bitter cola. It's talking about long life, endurance. Um, and why you ask when you pray. It's not a quick fix, so it's something that kind of like holds. And obi kola, it's offerings that we give to all the orishas, and it carries tremendous power. We're going to be learning more about obi and orobo in my master class, because these two elements are so important to understand, and they carry the energy of the universe. So that's something to keep in mind. So each element is a sentence of conversation, and one very very important element that is missing here is palm oil. And palm oil, it says that when Iyami puts her eyes on palm oil, she relaxes and she doesn't attack. So palm oil is something that we allows use a lot for Ipuese, because it relaxes the situation, it appeases the situation. So palm oil is a very important element we use in Ipuese. So the procedure, we use clay lamps, or to kind of like to with apple with palm oil, because the stories and the odus tell us that Iyamis are actually blind, and the light lets them see what you have brought. So it's kind of like a bell ringing, because they're also deaf, and the bell kind of like penetrates where ordinary speech cannot. So the lamp and the bell are not atmosphere, they are functional. They are instruments that open channels of perception and communicate within these dimensions. So you take each element in turn, you hold it, you speak to it. Babalawos, we use different Ifa verses accordingly, according to the problem, according to the order that came for divination. Then we put the elements inside either a clay plate, or an igba, a calabash, and we invoke Yami, we pay the respect. For example, here we have Oriki speaks about, Moyuba Iyami Osoronga, Ota no Eyemu, Ota Okoni Yedo, Eyo Yeni Kaleo Yije Koko. So it's talking about, my reverence to you, my mother, you who follow the trail of blood and the liver. Let the living blood gather by the earth, live, O ancient mother. So this is not flattery, It is a description of what Yami actually does. It's stating clearly, without flinching, She respects those who see her as what she is. So then when you leave, you don't look back because you have brought what you promised. So there's nothing else to be said. Um, once you guys start to do ceremonies, initiation ceremony, especially an Ebo in person, you will see how this unfolds. And of course, this is all done at night because that is uh, when Iyami works. That's her time of the day, we'll say. All right, so I want to talk about 5 ethics of daily alignment. So everything we cover, the cosmology, the Odu, the ceremony, the law of the sacred forest. It arrives at a single practical question, right? What does this looks like on an ordinary day? So I have these 5 principles here. There are not rules, imposed from the above, or distillations from the tradition itself. It's just rules that I have brought for you guys, so everything can start moving forward, even if you don't do it per se or you don't have a Babalao close by. So the first is restrain what you cultivate inside. You will feel envy, but remember, because you're human. You will feel resentment. So the tradition is not really demanding you be otherwise. But there's difference between a feeling that passes through you like a weather and a feeling you tend or revisit or build stories around it or you give daily energy or even actions upon. So very important that, like I mentioned, if you having those feelings, envy, jealousy, malice, recognize them and then try to work around them. These are all things we can put aside, and we need to understand that every one of us has our own destiny, and this world is full of wealth. Call it spiritual wealth, or material wealth, and everybody has their own time. Okay, so the second one is feeding. The tradition is precise about what that feeding procedure is look like. Okay. um Second, speak of others as if the earth is listening. This is very very important because the we learned that in Oshe Wori, we have the covenant of the earth that is judging us. So no matter where you go, no matter how hidden or how quiet you speak, um, your shadow is always there. So that means that your shadow is always kind of like recording everything that you do, you say, even in secret. And we all human beings, we all have Eshu in our back. So Eshu lives in Ipako, which is the back of your head. And Eshu is always listening to everything that we do, even if we're in the most sacred society or whatever. Nothing is hidden from God. So so like I say, your private speech is not private in the cosmological sense. So it passes through the same fabric that Iyami inhabits. Number three, honor women in your life because they carry the sacred energy of Iyami. Every woman carries that sacred, I will say, calabash of existence, or the Aye power that was given by Olodumare, sealed within their bodies, in their hands. So treat them accordingly. Try to be genuine. Try to be respectful, women, and also women, be respectful with people and be responsible about what Olodumare has given to you. Number four, um, maintain and do it. If divination has been prescribed or something, try not to avoid doing Ebo. because it exists for a reason. And we're learning that a boy it's a very uh, important technological spiritual device that communicates with all these dimensions. So, the tradition has a precise and accurate memory of what happens to those who skip it. Number five, seek knowledge, not just ceremony. What saved Orumila in the city of the birds at that decisive moment was not more offering. It was two seats of natural understanding, and that was knowledge that was properly held, created by the power of Ashe, which is why you are here. You are here to learn, to grow spiritually, morally, ethically. The more you learn, the more responsibility you had to help other people. Okay, so that's what wisdom is: the ability to use knowledge to help others and to leave this world a better place or better than how you find it. All right, so I want to talk about Onile, Mother Earth, and the great feminine synthesis. Sorry. So before we close, I want to show you the full picture, because the tradition doesn't ask you to relate to Yami in isolation. It asks you to understand her as a part of greater unity. So Nile, it's the owner of the house. That's what it means. The earth itself. The tradition says that Aye is the youngest daughter of Olodumare, and she's hidden inside the earth. She's invisible to every other force in creation. And the only one who could see her face was Orumila. So she was lonely, and she wanted the world to be inhabited. So she went to Olodumare, and then Olodumare told her, well, you want children, go and do Ifa consultation. So she went with Babalaos in heaven. They told her to make a bow, so she made a bow with 400 elements. And from that bow came the 400 companies of Aye, all the Irumales who inhabit the living world. So that's what the word Irumole means. It's 400 seats. So the earth is not passive. The earth it's a being. It's a daughter. It's one who chooses who it's actually there and who is alive. You know. So the tradition says that Yami, Odu, Onile, these are not just three separate entities. They are actually the same great feminine reality expressing through three different aspects. So Yami is the active regulatory phase, the one that pursues or corrects and intervenes. Odu is the mysterious foundational phase, be veil seal in the secret, uh, the ground on which all Ifa rests. So she's the manifestation of Olodumare, and she's the creator of the 256 Odu, so that we can communicate uh, and we can receive the message of destiny. And Onile is the Bast, the witnessing phase, the earth itself, remembering everything that happens within her body. So when the Oshe Wari covenant calls on the earth as judge, is calling on all these three simultaneously, all these three energies simultaneously. It's like nothing is hidden from the body of the earth. Everything happens within her. She remembers even when the practitioners forget. So very important. These three energies, it's a trinity. The trinity of feminine cosmological power. Very, very interesting. So, you know, we come to the end, and the question, the answer to the question, why are there birds on the king's crown even until today in Nigeria? The answer is in the simplest form, because the king knows where he came from. He came from a woman. His power came through a woman. His life began inside the Igbaiwa, which is the calabash of existence, the vessel that Iyami carries. And rather than building his authority on the erasure of what made him possible, he announces it. He wears it at the highest point of his most sacred object. And that is not weakness, that is the deepest form of strength. So Iyami Osoronga is not the enemy of humans. She's the precondition. She's the natural law. So without the Ipa Iwa, without that power, there is no human life. Without the force that corrects when balance breaks, there is no sustainable civilization. Without the ancient grief of the sister whose child was taken, there is no understanding of what it costs to break trust, what it will truly mean to repair. So without the power Oludumare gave to woman in compensation for what was taken, so without the power of Aye moving in the world through women's hand, the earth will be unbalanced in a way no ceremony will be able to correct. So, without Odu at the center of Ibodu, which is the sacred place where we Babalaos get initiated, without the feminine foundation, without propitiating that feminine foundation first, uh, we will not be here. I will not be here teaching you. So all honor goes to the ancestral mothers. We are the children of them. We are the children of the ancestral mothers. So I I want to leave this second part and ask you not to be afraid of Iyami, because the tradition asks you to know her. You know, to name her correctly, to approach her in the language she understands, to maintain the covenant that Ormila established at the river's edge, in your name before you arrive. I want you to take what you learn, let it settle. I'm going to be showing you more rules on how to be in balance with the ancestral mothers. I've been doing that in the chat. So I want you to also find the living tradition, the Babalao, the elders, the community. What I have given you here, it's kind of like a map. It requires relationship, it requires years of study, but your path has just begun. And the beginning, it has started. I feel like with the right knowledge and the right spirit, and that it's knowing the great power of feminine energy. So I wanna finish this saying Moyuba Iyami Osoronga, Moyuba Bobo Iyanla, Moyuba Onile, Moyuba Aye, Moyuba Odu, Ashe Ashe Ibashe Bobo Irumole, Ibashe Ijami, Ashe.